At exactly 2:41 in the morning, a heavy wooden chair slid across a locked living room floor. It wasn't pushed, it wasn't dragged, it was buyed. The family who lived there was upstairs, asleep. All the doors were sealed. Every window was nailed shut. And this time, it wasn't just the family watching. The local police were there, and so was the FBI. This is the story of a house that the government tried and failed to understand. In the early 1970s, the house didn't look special at all. It was just another home sitting quietly on a tree-lined street in a small American town. It had white siding, 2 stories, a basement, and a narrow backyard bordered by an old fence. Every afternoon, children would ride their bikes past it. Neighbors would wave to each other. Nothing about this house suggested danger, or history, or death. The family who moved in were ordinary people. The father had a steady job. The mother stayed home. They had 3 young children, all under the age of 10. They bought the house for a good price, but not a suspiciously cheap one. The previous owners had moved out quickly, citing what they called personal reasons. But that wasn't unusual. People move. No deaths had ever been reported in the house. No crimes. There weren't even any local rumors attached to the property. It was just a normal house. For the first 2 weeks, everything was perfectly fine. They unpacked their boxers, arranged the furniture, and started to settle into their new life. Then, the sounds began. It started small, almost dismissible. A faint knocking sound in the walls, late at night. The sound of footsteps creaking across the floorboards upstairs when everyone was definitely downstairs. The television in the living room would turn itself on, its screen filled with nothing but hissing static. The parents assumed it was just old wiring or the house settling. The children, with their vivid imaginations, were told not to make up stories. It was easy to explain away, until the night the kitchen table moved. The mother was standing in the doorway, about to turn off the light, when she saw it. The family's solid oak dining table, a piece of furniture so heavy it took 2 adults to lift, was sliding several inches across the linoleum floor. There was no shaking, no vibration from a passing truck, just smooth, deliberate motion. The father, bewildered and shaken, called the police. The responding officers were polite, but you could tell they were skeptical. This was a quiet town. They checked for intruders, sweeping the house from top to bottom. They searched the dark basement and the dusty attic. They even tested the floors with a level, checking to see if they were uneven. Everything was normal. One officer made a joke about house settling. Another gently suggested the family might be under a lot of stress from the move. The official police report was filed as unfounded. But that night, the disturbances didn't just continue. They escalated into something terrifying. At 1:13 a.m., a lamp on a dresser suddenly flew across the master bedroom and shattered against the opposite wall. Just 13 minutes later, at 1:26 a.m., one of the children's toys, a small wooden block that had been left downstairs in the living room, struck their bedroom door from the inside with incredible force. Then, at 1:41 a.m., something began pounding on the walls, a deep, concussive sound so violent that picture frames fell and glass cracked. The family called the police again, their voices trembling with panic. This time, the officers who arrived witnessed it for themselves. A dining chair tipped over without anyone touching it. A cabinet door in the kitchen slammed shut with bone-jarring force. And then, as they stood in the living room, a family Bible that was sitting on a coffee table lifted a few inches into the air and dropped onto the floor with a thud. The officers backed away slowly, their faces pale. Their professional skepticism was gone, replaced by disbelief and fear. A second police report was filed. This one was different. It noted unexplained movement of household objects. That specific report would later be referenced by federal agents. Word of the strange event spread like wildfire through the small town. Curious neighbors started gathering on the sidewalk, whispering and pointing. The local newspapers began publishing cautious articles, careful not to sound too sensational. Skeptics, of course, came forward, accusing the family of staging an elaborate hoax for attention or money. Then, a local radio station aired a raw, emotional interview with the family, and that's when everything changed. Within days, unmarked government vehicles began parking near the house. These weren't reporters. This was something else entirely. So, why did the FBI get involved? They didn't come because of ghosts. The Bureau doesn't investigate hauntings. They came because of patterns. Disturbingly similar events had been reported in different homes across multiple states. These reports described violent object movement, strange electrical interference, and profound psychological effects on the residents. In some cases, there were direct threats. In others, people had been injured. The Bureau had a classification for these events: unidentified environmental phenomena. The agents arrived quietly. No uniforms, no flashing lights, no press conferences. They installed sophisticated cameras in every room. They placed motion sensors and audio recorders throughout the house. They sealed rooms with tamper-proof tape. The family was instructed to stay and behave as normally as possible. They were now bait. And that's when the house truly reacted. On the third night of the official surveillance, the activity exploded. At 2:02 a.m., all cameras and audio recorders in the house lost their signals simultaneously. All of them, except one. The single camera left running in the living room captured something that defied all known laws of physics. A sofa cushion slowly lifted into the air. Then, it compressed inward, as if squeezed by an invisible hand, before being launched violently across the room. There were no strings. There was no visible force. Agents immediately burst into the room. As they stood there, assessing the scene, something struck the wall right behind them, hitting it so hard that it cracked the drywall. An agent later described the sound in a sworn statement as something hitting from the inside of the house. That exact phrase appears in a heavily redacted federal memo on the case. But the most disturbing developments involved the children. They all began waking up at the exact same time every single night, 2:41 a.m. They started reporting hearing whispers in their rooms, not just random sounds, but distinct words. Names. Their names. Their names. One of the children, terrified, told an investigator, "It knows where we sleep." The Bureau brought in psychologists to evaluate the family. The results came back clear. The children were healthy, and there were no signs of delusion or shared hallucination. This wasn't in their heads. The FBI immediately ordered the family to be removed from the home for their own safety. The house was left empty. The surveillance continued, but the activity did not stop. With no one inside, the government's high-tech sensors continued to trigger. Motion alerts activated in rooms that had been sealed with tape. Heavy furniture was documented moving on its own. Water faucets in the kitchen and bathrooms turned on and off by themselves, flooding the floors. One agent wrote in his field notes that a door closed and locked behind him while he was inside the empty house alone. Another agent, after a single walkthrough, flatly refused to ever re-enter the building. The case file grew thicker and thicker with bizarre, unexplainable data. And then, just as suddenly as it began, something unexpected happened. Without any public explanation, the entire investigation was shut down. The cameras were removed. The agents left. The family was told, in no uncertain terms, not to speak publicly about their experience ever again. The official reason given in the declassified documents was no ongoing threat detected. But internal notes, buried deep in the case file, told a different story. One line, partially visible beneath the thick black ink of a sensor's marker, read, "Phenomena persists despite environmental controls." The investigation didn't end because the activity stopped. It ended because they couldn't stop it. The house was sealed, and the streets slowly returned to normal. Or so it appeared. The family never moved back in. How could they? The house changed owners several times over the next few years, but no one ever stayed long. Neighbors continued to report strange occurrences, lights turning on and off inside the empty home. The sound of furniture being dragged across the floors late at night. The police were called multiple times, but every investigation found the house secured and empty. Eventually, the property was abandoned completely. The windows and doors were boarded up. Today, there's no plaque, no historical marker, no warning, just a decaying, silent house. Years later, a Freedom of Information Act requests managed to surface a single, mostly redacted page from the final FBI report. But the very last line, at the bottom of the page, was readable. It said, "Cause undetermined. Containment recommended. Case unresolved." The house still stands, and according to the locals who live on that quiet tree-lined street, it's still not empty. Thanks for watching. If stories like this fascinate you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more dives into the unknown. We'll see you in the next one.